we are talking about natural resources, our environment. A quick recap on natural resources and our environment. What is environment? When we study about environment, we discuss about ecosystems, environmental problems, ozone depletion, waste production, biodegradable, non-biodegradable substances, etc. Right. So, environment in a simple definition is nothing but a sum total, all things put together. What are the things? The external factors, what is outside the organism. It does not consist your reproductive system or a respiratory system, all external factors. The conditions, the situations, the elements, the compounds, what are all is the outside that helps you to live as a bioorganism on the earth. The factors and conditions that affect the organism. It can be sunlight, it can be water, it can be a desert environment, all the things, natural situations, and the food that you get, the elements, the compounds, what you take as a food. All these things are part of your environment. They can be abiotic factors or biotic factors. Abiotic is not living things, biotic are living things. So sum total of the external factors and conditions that affect the organisms but does not become part of it is called the environment. So what is an ecosystem? Ecosystem can be defined as something that is self-supporting, something that is self-sustaining. It is a set of living organisms, including plants and animals, as well as decomposers, and the things that help to sustain these plants and animals. That means what? For a plant to grow, you need soil, you need water, you need nutrients in the soil, you need air for the photosynthesis, you need air for respiration. All these things put together is an ecosystem, the self-supporting unit of the plants and animals and the decomposers, because when this plants and animal dies, something has to help to decompose this and bring it back into the natural elements or compounds of the soil, and then they will be again used by other plants and animals for their sustenance. So this is ecosystem. So what are the classifications or parts or different types of ecosystems? One is called natural ecosystem. That means what? It appears in nature. Man does not intervene and create it. So again, in natural, there is something called aquatic. Aquatic means water related. What are the water related? Fresh water related. Fresh water related. The river or a stream, which is a continuous passing of a body of water, is called a lotic system. There is something called a lentic system, which is a static water. The pond, the lake, etc. are the lentic system. Lotic is river, stream, etc. Lentic is ponds and lakes, etc. Then we have a marine system. Marine system is what? These are not freshwater or inland water, but on the sea. So on the sea means what? On the coast, you will have a delta and estuaries and all. So there is a small relationship with ending of a freshwater like a river or a glacier, but it is on the coast. It is mixed with the sea. Then you also have the corals, which are substrata, which are lithosphere in some form, but ocean floor in some other form. Then you have the mangroves, which are plants and animals which live in low-lying water, which is a seawater or a brackish water. Then you have a backwaters and lagoons. The seawater is come inside the land, but it is neither land, it is not a river, but again it's a seawater. So this is a marine type and aquatic type of natural factors of the ecosystem. Then we have terrestrial. It is not aquatic but terrestrial. What is that? On the land. What are the different land? Maybe we can say desert is one type of ecosystem, grasslands are one type of ecosystem, forests are one type of ecosystem. Because to call it as an ecosystem, you need a self-supporting unit of plants and animals and decomposers living on a particular type of soil, air and water. Right? Artificial ecosystem is man-made, created. What do you create? You create an ecosystem. You create a fish tank. In the fish tank, you put some worms, you put from germs, you put from planktons, you put from fish, you put a big fish, you put a small fish. You create an aquarium. You create a farm. You have some grass, you have some fodder, you have some duck, you have some ox, you have some what is that? Dog. You have different animals and you grow different plants. The plant products you give it to the animals. The animal waste, cow dung, you give it back to the plant as a manure. So this is an artificial ecosystem created by man. What are abiotic components? Biotic and abiotic are the two components of the environment. Environment is a sum total of all the factors. Some environment is the sum total of all the factors that affect the organism. Abiotic factors are inorganic substances. Abiotic is non-living. So in non-living we have one called inorganic, one called organic. What is inorganic? Inorganic are the elements in the earth that we get from the lithosphere. The elements are carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, calcium, phosphorus. These are the elements. Then we have the compounds, water, carbon dioxide. What is an element? The smallest indivisible part of a matter or a substance which has all the characteristics of that unique substance is an element. When you divide that further, it becomes an atom. Atom is the indivisible part of an element. Molecule is an indivisible part of the compound. Elements are naturally occurring. Compounds, some of them are naturally occurring, some are man-made. Elements also, some 98 or 100 of them is natural, while some, a few more are made in the lab. We have some 118 plus elements which are commonly known or commonly used. Some elements are gaseous, some elements are solid, some elements are liquid. That is the different states of matter. We will study more about elements in the chemistry classes. Organic biotic component. What is that? Organic is what we get from the living organisms and the dead. The dead and living plant and animal gives the organic substances. Inorganic substances are coming from nature. Carbon, nitrogen, water, carbon dioxide, it is a nature. The elements and compounds on the soil or the lithosphere. The organic components of the abiotic are the dead and living plants and animals give them. What are they? They are the carbohydrates, the proteins, the lipids, the nucleic acids. In other words, the food we eat is in some form organic component which goes inside us and gets converted into sucrose and fructose and glucose, which can be converted into energy for us. Then the decomposers like the bacteria and fungi, what they do, they work on these carbohydrates, proteins, lipids that is got from the dead and living organisms of plants and animals and convert these carbohydrate, proteins and lipids into inorganic substances. What are inorganic substances? The component elements and compounds, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, water, water vapor. So it is a decomposer that converts the dead and living organisms of the plants and animals, the carbohydrates, proteins in them into elements and compounds. Now in abiotic there is another type of component called climatic, that is the heat, light, water, etc. Heat, light, water and all is not considered as a matter because they don't occupy or they don't have mass, right? So those are abiotic components, and then we have edaphic components. What are edaphic components? They are the soil, the substrata, the topography, the mineral, the pH value, etc. pH value is what? pH is nothing but how acidic or how alkaline a particular water or soil is. Topography is maybe is it hilly, is it plains, is it plateau, is it volcanic mountain. So those are the things that we talk about when we say edaphic factors. Climatic factors are how much light you get. Is it in the Arctic region, 9 months of a year you have daytime, or how hot it is. Are you on the equator? How humid it is. Are you closer to sea? All these are the climatic factors. So these are the abiotic components. Biotic components, we have producers and consumers. That means what? Plants and animals. Producers synthesize their own food. That means what? They are autotrophs. Blue green algae to green plant, many of them are producers. They synthesize their own food. Consumers are like this. They don't do any work. They expect somebody else to cook the food and give it, and we will procure, and we do not produce food. We take food produced by somebody else, which means what? A fish will grow their body and become a bigger fish, and then we will eat that fish. A hen will lay egg, we will eat that hen. A goat will have a lamb, and then we will eat that lamb. A plant will produce a fruit, we will eat that fruit. Which means we are consumers. We are not producers of food, we are consumers. Plants produce their own food. There are many other organisms that depend directly or indirectly on other organisms for their food. When a hen is eating a worm, hen is depending on the worm. Worm is indirectly depending the hen is indirectly depending on the plant. Worm is directly depending on the plant. That means what? The worm eats the grass, hen eats a worm. Hen is not eating the grass, hen is eating the worm. So that is why we say some consumers are directly dependent on others, some consumers are indirectly dependent on others. But who are those others? Others are the producers of the food. That means they synthesize their own food. Now in consumers we have different types: carnivore, herbivore, omnivore, parasites. These are all heterotroph. Heterotroph means do not synthesize their own food, ask somebody else to synthesize. Herbivores are cow, goat, buffalo, etc. Primary consumers. Small carnivores are rabbit, snake, which feed on herbivores. They are secondary consumers. So snake will feed on the rabbit, rabbit will feed on small worms or small insects, so they are secondary consumers. Large carnivores are lion and vulture. Lion will eat a goat, lion will eat a rabbit, they are the tertiary consumers. And then animals like man, crow, dog, which eat both plants and animals are called omnivores. So you have a heterotroph, that is herbivore, carnivore, omnivore, but again they are called primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Primary consumer will directly eat the plant and plant product, secondary consumer will eat the plant product, tertiary consumer will eat the secondary consumers. Now organisms which consume the dead remains are called decomposers. Organisms which convert the dead plant and animal into the constant components of elements and compounds is called the process of decomposition. Organisms that consume on dead remains are called decomposers. Then what are parasites? Parasites are organisms that live on other living organisms. A tapeworm lives inside your stomach. The leech lives on the surface of your skin. Lice also. So these are organisms which are parasites, and there are some called decomposers. Parasites are not really very helpful in a lot many ways, but decomposers are really helpful in a lot many ways because they are the ones who convert the dead plant and animal into the biodegradable decomposition into elements, into compounds, so that they come back to soil to the natural form. What are the very good examples? The very good examples are the bacteria or the fungi which replenish the soil fertility, because of which you can continue to grow more crops in that soil. Now food chain. What's a food chain? The transfer of food energy from the producer to consumer is a food chain. The transfer of food energy from the producer to the consumer. Who is the producer? The plant. Who is the consumer? It could be primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, omnivore, herbivore, carnivore. It could be anybody. Now the food in the form of energy is transferred in the food chain. It is sequential. It is sequential and interconnected. From the plant, it directly does not go into the lion. From the plant, the energy has to go to maybe a goat. From there, it has to go to lion. So it is sequential and it is interconnected. If there is no goat, the lion will not get its food. So the energy transfer steps are sequential, they are interconnected, and then there has to be a series of organisms with eating and being eaten. There has to be a plant, there has to be a goat, and there has to be a lion. There should be a series of organisms with eating and being eaten. The transfer of food energy is sequential, interconnected, and the energy transfer is in various steps from the producer to the consumer. This proceeds in a progressive line. Progressive means what? One after another, sequential. And straight line means what? They are all interconnected and in a straight line. It is a unidirectional flow. That is why we call it as a straight line. Unidirectional means what? In one direction. When a goat eats a plant and a lion eats a goat, there is nothing that the plant gets from the lion. The energy they don't get directly. But is there no benefit of existence of lion in the market? No. If the lion does not eat goat, the lot many goats will be there. Reproduction of goats will grow up and their population will grow. They will eat all the plants and there will be no more plants. So in that way, survival of the plants depends on existing of the lion in one form. But energy is unidirectional. Energy is unidirectional. But energy is wasted also. Energy is wasted as heat in metabolic reaction. When energy from plant it reaches the goat, it is reduced. From goat to lion, it is still further reduced. The quantum of available energy decreases, it is reduced, and successively it is reduced as it goes from one level to another. There are trophic levels. What are the trophic level? The primary producer, secondary producer, tertiary producer are all called trophic levels, a level of the food chain. Green plants form the first trophic level. Herbivore primary consumer, second trophic level. Secondary consumer Secondary consumer level is the primary carnivore. Secondary carnivore, tertiary consumer level. Tertiary carnivore, quaternary consumer level. That means there are 4 to 5 levels of trophic levels. Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Sometimes there could be quaternary consumer also. What is a quaternary consumer? It's a tertiary carnivore. Carnivore can be primary, secondary or tertiary. That means what? A small rabbit is there, a fox eats that rabbit. So, rabbit is eating a worm, so rabbit can be called carnivore. Fox is eating the rabbit, so fox is secondary carnivore. But fox is eaten by a lion or tiger, then it can be called a tertiary carnivore. That is how the trophic levels are defined. What is a food web? Now food chain is sequential, interconnected, straight line, unidirectional, energy flow, all that we have seen. Food web is it's a web. Web means what? It is a relationship of interlocking pattern. Web means a relationship of interlocking pattern, relationship among the organisms, the plants and animals. And in interlocking pattern means what? Each organism is generally eaten by one or more kinds of organism. Each organism or each thing is eaten by one or more types of organism. If you have a grass and only if the grasshopper eats the grass, then there is no point. The grass is eaten by not just grasshopper but one or more organisms. Maybe frog also eats grass. And then if there is only one organism that will eat the frog, only snake will catch the frog and no other thing will eat the frog. If that is the case, then there is no point. If there is more than one organism which will eat a level below, tropic level below, if each organism is generally food for more than one organism, then it will create a crisscross pattern of interlocking relationship. The interlocking relationship, the crisscross pattern of what is being eaten and being eaten by more than one type of organism is called a food web. Many times it is not a straight line. The food chain is a straight line, but food web it is not. Though the energy flow is unidirectional, more than one type of organism prey on the lower level. This web, this network of food chain becomes interlinked at various levels, maybe at primary consumer or a primary herbivore, secondary carnivore, tertiary carnivore, some level or the other, it is interconnected. This feeding connection is related. Why? If this is the way, only then there will be stability. Stability means what? Supply of the source of food for all forms of constituents of the ecosystem, and then population will be in check. As we discussed earlier, if goat cannot be eaten by lion, if goat can be eaten only by tiger, then the lions will not be eating goat, and so the number of goats could grow. If lion and tiger both can eat goat, both will prey upon the goat, and the number of goats in the grassland will not grow too much. Likewise, if the plants can be eaten only by goat but not by donkey, not by deer, not by camel, then the plants and animals, the number of plants in the grassland will be more, the number of herbivores that eat that plants will be less. That is why plants serve as a food for very many forms, not just goat, not just deer, not just camel, not just giraffe. So this is the web, this is a food chain. Now grass is a food for rabbit as well as rat as well as small birds as well as grasshopper. But all of these are food for the hawk. Except grass, all these things are eaten by the hawk. Hawk indirectly eats grass, but directly eats rabbit or rat or small bird or grasshopper. All these four eat grass. Likewise, rat is eaten either by the snake or by the hawk. Both eat. The rodent as well as the bird eats the rat. Likewise, grasshopper serves as a food both for frog as well as the bird. Grasshopper is a food for two types of organisms. Frog or rat, both are eaten by the snake. Frog or rat, both are eaten by the snake. Snake or hawk both eat rat. Frog or rat both are eaten by the snake. The rat, the rabbit, the bird, snake, everything is eaten by the hawk. Rat, rabbit, bird, snake, everything is eaten by the hawk. So when this happens, when different organisms eat organisms from different levels, and when there is an interlocking relationship between the organisms in the way one or more is eaten by one or more, there is a loss of energy also that happens. So there is a law of thermodynamics. Thermo is heat, thermodynamics is the effects of heat. There is a gradual decrease in the available energy at successive tropic levels. That means what? The grass gives some sort of energy to the rabbit, but rabbit does not give same amount of energy to the hawk. The grasshopper is eaten by the frog. The grasshopper, whatever energy it got from the grass, the same energy it does not transfer to the frog. It transfers lesser energy. And when the frog is eaten by the snake, it transfers still lesser energy. When the snake is eaten by the fox or tiger, it transfers still lesser energy. So there is a gradual decrease in the available energy at each successive tropic levels. So this levels of energy is mentioned or managed or represented in the form of pyramids, ecological pyramid. So pyramid of number is the number of individuals at different tropic levels. Pyramid of number is the number of individuals at different tropic levels. So upright pyramid means what? Like for example in the pond, from a plankton to the large fish. What is a plankton? There is a phytoplankton, there is a zooplankton, there is a small fish, there is a large fish. So this is an inverted pyramid. From this there is a lot of phytoplankton, there are only one or two large fishes. Then you have a parasite model which is an inverted pyramid. Inverted pyramid is what? There will be only one or two parasites and then plant to the bird to the bug to the bacteria. Lots of bacteria will eat on a few lot bugs, which will be less, for the number of birds will be less than the number of bugs, and the number of plants will be less than the number of birds. This is a inverted parasite model of the ecological pyramid in numbers. But when it comes to biomass, it is not the number of individual, it is the amount of living organic matter. Pyramid of biomass talks about amount of living organic matter. Pyramid of biomass, amount of living organic matter. Pyramid of numbers, number of individuals. This ecological pyramid is number of individuals or amount of organic matter or energy at different trophic level in the ecosystem, in the food chain. The energy or the organic matter extent or the individuals at a different trophic level in an ecosystem, in a food chain, is represented in the form of a pyramid called ecological pyramid. So when we talk about biomass, in an upright you have a grass eats rabbit, rabbit is eaten by snake, and snake is eaten by hawk. Grass is eaten by rabbit, rabbit is eaten by snake, snake is eaten by hawk. This is a upright model. While the inverted model, we have a phytoplankton eaten by zooplankton, which is eaten by fish, which is eaten by large fish. Inverted model. In energy, there are no two models, there is only one model. It is an upright model, upright chart, upright pyramid. What does a pyramid say? The plant eats rabbit, rabbit eats fox, fox eats tiger. So when you design like this, the available energy is highest at the producer level. Plant has the highest energy and tiger has the lowest energy. Tiger has the lowest energy in this upright model of pyramid of energy. Flow of energy. Now we know energy flows from phytoplankton to zooplankton to small fish to large fish, and we also know this energy, when it flows, there is a decrease because of the law of thermodynamics. Now energy is continuously transferred from one trophic level to another, and it is repeated consumption by one from the another. But actually where it is coming from, all the energy is coming from the sunlight, and this energy from the sunlight is repeatedly transferred in the food chain, and it is converted from one form to another and given to the next trophic level, the ecosystem. Of this, 90% is consumed or used or wasted. 90% of the energy is consumed or used or wasted. Only 10% is available to the next higher level. Only 10% is passed on to the next higher level. So this loss of energy occurs because heat is generated or heat is expended at each step for metabolism, for photosynthesis, etc. So loss of energy occurs as heat. Then we also generate a lots of useless materials. If you take the plant or an animal, if you take the photosynthesis, which is food creation, or an animal where we have a ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, excretion, lot of waste is generated. For example, in a human being, of all the food that we take, we create a lot of wastewater which we pass as a urine. We create a lot of solid waste which is excreta. We have a gaseous waste which is a carbon dioxide. Likewise, plants also have. So likewise, in every form in the ecosystem, in every link of the food chain, when transfer of energy happens from one level to another, almost 90% is consumed or used up or wasted, and only 10% is passed on. Now when you say consumed or used up or wasted, some of them waste is also happening in the form of solid, liquid and gas. Now are these the only waste? No, we will look at other ways in next slide. But then because of these things are created, energy is not fully available for transfer, but it gets spent up. Now when we say consumed, it is consumed for metabolism, for digestion, and then it is consumed for respiration. If you have to breathe in, breathe out, you need energy. So the energy is consumed. Reproduction, growth, everything consumes energy in plants, in animals, because all plants are primary producers and animals are directly or indirectly dependent on the autotroph. And so whatever energy we get from the lower trophic level, we get only 10% of what they got, and then we waste about 90% of it, and only 10% we pass on to the next higher in the each trophic level, right? The different form of waste, effluent and sewer, are from the industry or the home. Solid waste is trash and rubbish. Gaseous waste is smoke from the kitchen, etc. All these are the different types of waste that human activities create. Human beings themselves create waste like excreta or urine, etc., carbon dioxide, etc. Now, solid waste. Human activities are the main sources of soil pollution. Not only soil pollution, air and water pollution also. Solid waste is mostly in the soil. What are the biodegradable waste? The two types of degradable and non-degradable. Biodegradable means it can be converted by biological methods, by natural methods into some constituent elements and compounds. Biodegradable, nature will convert. Degradable, we can find ways and means of getting it converted into its elementary elements and compounds. Non-degradable, it is not possible to turn it back into natural substances. So biodegradable waste are those on which microorganism can act upon. Microorganisms can act upon bacteria or fungi, and they will break down the complex organic substances, the carbohydrate, protein, lipid, etc., into simpler substances like elements and compounds and mixtures, water and water vapor, etc. So when they convert into simpler substances, they are harmless substances, naturally acceptable to living things. So microorganisms have capability to convert bacteria, certain bacteria and fungi can convert certain complex materials that we get from plants and animals, which are called biodegradable waste, if it can be broken down into simpler substances which are harmless by these microorganisms in the natural way. Now sometimes these biodegradable waste are also acting as pollutant. Why? The speed with which bacteria and fungi act on them and convert into natural. If you put some 1 kilo of cow dung on a paddy field, in a few days, the microorganism will convert them into compost and manure, and it will get mixed with the soil. You will not find any trace. But if you put 100 tons of cow dung on a small field, then the speed with which the microorganism convert them and break them into simpler substances will be lesser. So what will happen? This solid waste will clog the system, will clog the whole system. So when they are more in number, they will act as pollutant. When the accumulation of the solid waste is faster than the rate at which it is being converted into simpler substances by decomposition by the microorganisms, then they will act as a dampener. Another problem is the flies and the fleas will breed on heaps of solid waste. These flies and fleas will fly here and there. They will carry the germs. They will carry diseases. Diarrhea, typhoid, tuberculosis, cholera, conjunctivitis are some of the diseases caused by the flies which thrive on solid waste. Now this solid waste also block the drains. So sewer will come to the surface. It will create pools. So when water stagnation happens on that, malaria, mosquitoes will breed, mosquitoes will cause malaria or chikungunya, etc. So water stagnation or sewer stagnation is caused. They also block the rainwater or the flood water. So because they block, they form as a block on the way of the water flow, it will cause flood in unexpected areas. It will cause flooding in the low-lying areas. It will cause water logging. All this is also caused by excess of solid waste, though some of them are biodegradable. Now, what is non-biodegradable? They cannot be degraded naturally. That means the action of the bacteria and fungi is not adequate to convert the complex materials into simpler harmless substances. Fertilizer, pesticide are one form of non-biodegradable waste. The excess of fertilizer or pesticide on the soil is cannot be further destroyed. It may affect the soil fertility. It may change the alkalinity or acidity of the soil. That will have an impact on the yield. That will A. Cause famines. B. It will cause scarcity. Now this pesticide or chemical fertilizer may get into the root, get into the plant and then get into the seeds. And then we will eat that. The plants and animals will be consuming that contaminated or the pesticide and weedicides. That means what? By biomagnification, this will become toxic. Everybody will be carrying this chemical, non-degradable, toxic substances in all of the living creatures. Now, sometimes solid wastes are buried in low-lying areas. That is called a landfill. Some of the waste can be recycled. Non-biodegradable waste, if not used for landfill, will be used for recycling. For example, plastics or metals. So household waste, what we should do? We should try to segregate them into degradable and non-degradable. We should try to convert the degradable waste into compost or manure. Now cow dung etc. can be used as a biogas generation purpose. Now biogas is what? Biogas is around 40% methane and the rest is carbon dioxide. The remains of after generation of biogas from the biomanure or the cow dung and other things, the remaining can be used as a manure for the agricultural purposes. So this is one way of recycling the degradable waste. Biomedical waste is there. Suppose you undergo surgery and a portion of your skin or a bone or a tooth or something has been surgically removed. Where will we throw that? How will we take care of that? So when you are undergoing a surgery, a lot of blood, lot of pus, lot of things would have come. Now all this is cleaned with a cotton and a bandage. After that, where will we throw that? Those are the biodegradable waste. So how to use, what to do with that? That is a very important ethical question that all of us have to answer, because it is one, respect to the patient from whom it is taken. Two, it is respect to other people who are living who to be safeguarded. That is why people nowadays complain that the areas around the hospitals are having more degradable waste on their soil, air and water pollution scope. So that has to be specifically taken care as per the regulations. Now, incineration is a process by which we burn out non-degradable waste into ash. We convert them into ash. By what? By heating them or burning them at 1000 degrees centigrade. In kiln, in cement factories and all, incineration is possible. This is one way of disposing of the non-degradable waste. What is the greenhouse effect? Global warming is caused by continuous increase in the concentration of the greenhouse gases. Now, the concentration of greenhouse gas causing global warming is called the greenhouse effect. So, what is this greenhouse? Atmosphere is a cover on the surface of the earth. It extends from 2 to 10 kilometers above the surface of the earth. It is a mixture of gases. Now, this atmospheric gas has some temperature, and the earth's surface has some temperature. All this is because of the heat of the sun rays. Now, this atmospheric temperature of the earth rises, which is what is called as a global warming. The globe becomes warm. So, temperature on the surface of the earth goes up, the temperature on the earth goes up, the atmosphere temperature goes up. This increase is called global warming. Now, this global warming will cause the sea level to rise, will cause the glaciers to melt, will have make the snow-clad mountain, the snow to fall down by melting as glaciers. All this can happen when global warming happens. These are the symptoms of global warming. What actually is happening? Atmosphere is a cover. This atmosphere, the mixture of gases, filters and scatters the solar radiation. Solar radiation is the radiation from the sun. How it does it? It does it because atmosphere has clouds, that is water vapor, it has dust particles, that is solid particles, it has gases, it has so many things. So atmosphere is a mixture. So this scatters and filters the radiation from the sun. So this atmosphere acts as a protective glass wall to prevent the radiation of the sun fully falling on the earth. Now 48% of the solar radiation reaches the earth's surface. The rest are either filtered or scattered. Of this 48%, only 1% is used by the plant. Plants need sunlight to make food. That is the most important thing. Once plants make food, all other creatures can eat that food and closely survive. Even if you are indoor, even if you don't look at the sunlight, if you have tube light, you can survive in your room. But plants definitely need sunlight. Of the 48% solar radiation, only 1% is used by the plants. Now, the infrared radiation that is let by the atmosphere onto the earth is also returned back by the earth. It is reflected back by the earth. And this that comes from the sun and that is reflected by the earth, both are absorbed by the greenhouse gases. What are the greenhouse gases? The gases on the atmosphere, and these are re-emitted in all directions. This is called flux. So first, the cloud, the dust, the gases on the atmosphere scatter and filter the greenhouse effect, scatter and filter the solar radiation and give a greenhouse effect. That means protect the earth from the radiation. Whatever remaining, that 48% that comes to the earth, is again reflected by the earth back into the atmosphere, which is again absorbed and re-emitted by the greenhouse gases. So what are the main greenhouse gases? The carbon dioxide, the methane, the chlorofluorocarbons are the main greenhouse gases. CH4 is methane, CO2 is carbon dioxide, N2O is nitrous oxide. N2O means two elements of nitrogen and one oxygen element and one nitrogen element. How many atoms? Two atoms of nitrogen element, one atom of oxygen element combined together to form one molecule of nitrous oxide. That is how we write. The elements have a symbol, the compounds have a formula, molecular formula. So these are the greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, chlorofluorocarbon and nitrous oxide. These greenhouse gases in the atmosphere absorb and re-emit the infrared radiations that comes from the sun and that is reflected by the earth. Now if these gases are more in the atmosphere, it will increase the temperature of the earth because re-emission is more. Now how this will become more? These greenhouse gases concentration on the mixture of air in the atmosphere goes up when air pollution is more. What is air pollution? Pollution caused in the air by human activity. Carbon dioxide comes from where? Not only we breathe out carbon dioxide, but fossil fuel burning also lets out lot of carbon dioxide. Now lots of marshes and the animal waste gives out the biogas plants give out methane, which is again a greenhouse gas. Then chlorofluorocarbon are used in aerosol spray, in refrigerators, in air conditioners, etc. Burning of the paddy stubs also gives a lot of greenhouse gases. So these will get collected to the atmosphere and then the way they filter and scatter and re-emit the solar radiation will get impacted and this will give rise to higher temperature on earth. This is what we call as a greenhouse effect. The global warming caused by the changes in the scattering or filtering or re-emitting capability of the atmosphere due to addition of global greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, chlorofluorocarbon is global warming or greenhouse effect. What is ozone depletion? Ozone is a shield that intercepts high energy ultraviolet radiations. Just like atmosphere protects by filtering and scattering, ozone is a filter for ultraviolet radiations. It saves the earth by preventing these coming from the sun to the earth. Now, this is three atoms of oxygen form one molecule of ozone. Three atoms of oxygen form one molecule of ozone, O3. It is very scarce in lower atmosphere but adequate in higher atmosphere. What is lower and higher atmosphere? Lower atmosphere is troposphere, higher level is called stratosphere. Ionosphere, stratosphere, troposphere, we know all the layers of the atmosphere. The concentration of ozone is maximum at about 25 km above equator and at about 20 kilometers above the poles. The concentration of ozone is high at equator it is 25 kilometers above the earth, while at zone poles it is about 20 kilometer, 10 to 20 kilometer above the earth. That means what? Ozone is not at an equal distance from the earth, it is at different levels. And it is scarce in troposphere and adequate in stratosphere. Now, ozone is photodissociated. Photodissociated means what? In the presence of sunlight, that is this ultraviolet radiation, it dissociates. O3 becomes O2 plus O. O3 becomes O2 plus O. That means oxygen goes up and ozone comes down. The extent of oxygen is increased and the extent of ozone comes down. And it generates, not only dissociates, it generates. Simultaneously at the same time both happens. Some oxygen element plus O2 and O1 combine together to form O3 and some O3 split into O2 and O1. So this is a dissociation and generation. This simultaneously keeps on happening and so the balance is maintained. The concentration of the oxygen is maintained. And this is happening at about 50 km above sea level. It is happening at about 50 km above sea level. Now, this ozone shield is very important because it intercepts the ultraviolet rays. It is important for the survival of the life on earth. Now, harmful chemicals produce active chlorine, Cl or ClO radicals in the presence of ultraviolet. This chlorine is going into the atmosphere. It is a pollutant. When the extent of this pollutant on the air is higher level, they will, in the presence of this ultraviolet radiation, cause a chain reaction. And because of the chain reaction, the ozone will split into oxygen more, that is the dissociation will be more and generation will be less. The dissociation and generation in the presence of normal ultraviolet radiation of the sun in the normal circumstances is in balance and the concentration is maintained. But in abnormal situation where the presence of active chlorine is more or chlorine radicals are more, then they will cause chain reaction, causing more dissociation, causing lesser ozone and more oxygen into the layer. So what will happen? the ozone availability or the ozone generation will be unbalanced. So it will result in what? The ultra radiations, UV radiation, ultraviolet radiation, UV radiation will pass through when there is a gap there, when there is a lesser O3 there. O3 is ozone. So this is what we call as a hole in the ozone layer, HOLE, hole in the ozone layer. So this will cause, so when the radiation comes through that so-called hole in the ozone layer, it is not a hole on the cloth or a paper, it is called like that. It will cause a lot of damage. For example, for human beings, it causes sunburn as a lowest level, skin cancer at a higher level, it affects the eye, it causes early cataract, it damages the body's resistance, it kills the immunity, and it gives you scope for falling sick very soon, very frequently, and very repeatedly. This is a problem with radiation, sun's UV radiation reaching the earth more than what was normally happening some hundreds of years ago. Second is it interferes with the process of photosynthesis and it sends out more carbon dioxide. Now carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, we know. When greenhouse gas goes up, the global warming goes up. So that is also a problem. So it interferes with the photosynthesis. When it interferes with the photosynthesis, the quality of the food produced by the plant or the yield is affected. That will have an impact on the primary producer, the quantum of food available coming down, which will again cause more problems. So ozone layer depletion is causing multiple problems. Thanks for watching this video on natural resources. We were talking about our environment.